This is kind of a lunch session. So many of us have skipped lunch. Will be served later, right? Anyhow, why don't you enjoy your meal? We will be working at the second panel. No problem at all. Yeah, I'm Kim Sung-han, Korea University professor of international relations and former national security advisor to President Yoon. I'm very delighted to have this wonderful opportunity to moderate the second panel, which is dealing with U.S., Korea, Japan trilateral partnership. As you may agree, U.S., Korea, Japan trilateral relations have made a big progress during Yoon, Kishida, and Biden period. So this is a perfect time when we need to evaluate our achievements, if any. And also we need to think about how to make our trilateral partnership more sustainable. And then we need to diagnose any kind of obstacles or barriers to further progress, particularly at the domestic front. So for these issues to be addressed, we have invited four very excellent panelists. The first panelist is Dr. Katrin Fraser Katz, Adjunct Fellow with CSIS Korea Chair and a scholar in residence at the University of Miami. And the second panel is Mr. Seiler, a well-known senior advisor on intelligence. He's a senior advisor at CSIS Korea Chair and a former National Intelligence Council officer for North Korea. Third speaker is Ambassador SHIN Kak-soo, Deputy Chairman of the NEAR Foundation and the former Vice Foreign Minister and former Ambassador to Japan. Last but not least, Dr. Jo Bi-yeon, Associate Research Fellow at KIDA, Korea Institute for Defense Analysis. This panel consists of three parts, the first of which is to listen to initial remarks of our four panelists. Then I will ask some difficult questions to each of you, and then I will open the floor for Q&A, and then I will be wrapping up. For more dynamic kind of a discussion, I think let me change the order. I think the first speaker is Dr. Katz, and then Ambassador SHIN Kak-soo, and then Seiler, and then finally, Jo Bi-yeon, Dr. Jo, in alternate ways for more equal-footed and more dynamic discussions. So without further ado, let me give the floor to Dr. Katz.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. I want to say thank you to CSIS and to the Korea Foundation for the opportunity to speak today. I'm honored to be here on this esteemed panel. Dr. Kim promised some difficult questions today. Did you want to start with the questions, or should I
No,
run
just
through?
the initial remark. Okay.
Initial remarks, okay. So I wanted to touch on three things. One is where are things, where have things been left in the trilateral between U.S., Japan, and South Korea from the prior leadership. We have two leadership transitions now in this trilateral. I think it's safe to say that it made historic progress in recent years under the leadership of, I have to say, President Yoon in particular, but of course President Biden and Prime Minister Kishida as well. The Camp David agreement was, as we all know, unprecedented, kicking off a cooperation broad and deep, unprecedented across a number of areas, particularly its commitment to consult, which basically acknowledges a linkage between the security security of the three countries. Absolutely unprecedented, and I think many in this room would agree, a very positive development for both the three countries and for the region, and I would venture to say for the world. So I'll show kind of my hope in that. I hope this will continue. But there's a second question of will it last? I believe that the statement by the three leaders in Lima last Friday was about a secretariat that had been established, and President Biden had said this is built to last, and I certainly hope so. I just wanted to note, though, what I've seen in certain commentaries, there's kind of two scenarios laid out in terms of what's to come. It's very hard to make predictions. This is not a partisan statement. I think anyone would agree that President-elect Trump likes to be unpredictable, sees it as a source of leverage. Therefore, it's very hard to venture predictions. It's also hard to know which advisors will be the most influential, if any. And of course, the Trilateral is also fairly new. This level of cooperation is fairly new, so predictions are difficult. I'll say there's two scenarios I've seen laid out in commentaries. One is one that I personally don't like so much. I hope doesn't happen, but it's sort of like a weakened level of cooperation between the three, going off of some of the dynamics of Trump's first term with a more transactional approach to alliances, a focus on burden sharing, which tended to focus discussions less on strategic matters and more on kind of short-term cost-sharing issues. Arguably, this, over the longer term, could have played out in a kind of way that was detrimental to the bilateral alliance and to trilateral. Not to say that was the long-term intention, but it could have had that impact because of kind of hedging strategies that could come into play from that, and possibly, South Korea considering other countries considering other avenues for security. I'll say that is one scenario that's laid out that could repeat. So, because we've had some of these issues before. A second is more optimistic, and it focuses on other dynamics of the first Trump administration, which were things that were continuity with the Biden administration. Things like free and open Indo-Pacific started under the Trump administration, was suggested by Prime Minister Abe, so listening to allies. Things like the Quad, which remain in place. We also have peace through strength, which is a term that's being used across the board among the three countries. So there's kind of two scenarios in play in terms of what could happen. Again, I hope the first scenario is what comes to actually happen. A third, what would I predict? Again, predictions are really dangerous. But we can look historically and we can see that the alliances have handled difficulties in the past. We can see that certainly U.S. policy changes have created uncertainty, fears of abandonment, and lo and behold, we're all sitting here today and the alliance remains strong and hopefully will for many years to come. That's because of two things. One is an external security environment which all three allies saw shared security interests. And so that's really at the core of the trilateral and of the relationships between. And the second is the willingness for all three of the players here, the allies and Korea and Japan more recently, to manage their relationships, to manage alliances in order to reassure if things happen. And so I see three changes since Trump won that are hopeful. I would venture to say that we will see a continuation of the trilateral. Why? One, the external environment is arguably as dangerous as it's been. We've heard since Cold War, World War II, we've heard Trump himself say, I don't want to see World War III, certainly does not want to lose it. I would venture to say we need this trilateral to be as strong as possible in preventing that outcome that we all hope this president and the other leaders don't see under their watch. So that's number one. Second, I would guess that hopefully U.S. alliance management under this external environment would be stronger, with a will to kind of manage the alliance in ways that we saw less of in the first Trump term. But we certainly see that in the South Korean leader, Yoon, and we see it in, I believe, Prime Minister Ishiba, in a desire to keep things strong, and I think that in and of itself is going to matter. Thirdly, big change, Korea-Japan ties are certainly not where they were during the first Trump term. And the U.S. doesn't even have to do a lot right now. I would say under the current two leaders, it's, we have a 60th anniversary next year. Things are, thank goodness, in a very good place. Those three changes, to me, I'm able to make a prediction, still very dangerous because predictions are difficult generally. But I would have a strong caveat that you can't take anything for granted. The alliance management absolutely matters. There's agency in these relationships. And if you don't have efforts to reassure when policy changes happen, in the past, those efforts to reassure have meant all the difference. And we need to make sure among the three countries that the alliance management remains intact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Katz. And the second speaker is Ambassador Shin Kak-soo.
Thank you, Professor Kim. And I would like to join Dr. Katz for expressing my deep gratitude to the organizers of this important and timely meeting. For inviting me. Let me start by evaluating the progress in the Trilateral partnership. My scorecard on the progress made since the Camp Day Summit meeting last year is A+, because I believe that Trilateral efforts to flesh out the main tenet of the spirit and principles that the three Camp David Accord initiated was very constructive and fruitful. Especially intensive strategic dialogue among the three key players was very remarkable to boost strategic communication and coordination among the three partners. We have witnessed strong cooperation in coping with the mounting nuclear threat from Pyongyang through very close intelligence sharing on North Korean military missile provocations, and holding of the Trilateral multi-domain military exercise Freedom Edge, close cooperation in creating the multinational sanctions monitoring system, monitoring team, and adoption of the memorandum of cooperation on Trilateral security cooperation framework. And the three partners also highlighted the importance of improving human rights in North Korea through convening the Trilateral meeting on human rights in the DPRK, as well as making progress in establishing a new contact group on North Korean human rights issues. Especially, I would like to emphasize the importance of the Trilateral partnership by allowing Seoul and Tokyo to bypass the difficulty of pursuing bilateral security cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo, which is very controversial in Seoul. And we have also witnessed the implementation of or keeping the firm resolve of three partners to maintain rules-based order in the region. Through just upholding status quo and peaceful resolution of the Taiwan Strait issue and ensuring the freedom of the sea in the South China Sea. Well, another area of tangible progress is economic security. The three partners agreed to jointly enhance cooperation in the Mineral Security Partnership, deepen their cooperation in the critical and emerging technology, launch the supply chain early warning system, and start the Trilateral Technology Leaders Training Program. There were also meaningful strides in exchange of peoples among three countries, and so on. So, in a nutshell, we may say that this landmark partnership reinforced at Camp David last year just started evolving into a very effective means or a vehicle for peace and prosperity in the region and beyond. Dr. Katz mentioned two scenarios for the future of this partnership. I firmly just align with the second scenario. I mean, it will be continued despite some troubles or problems. I think the trilateral partnership can be sustained and further developed in the future. Of course, we have headwinds from domestic politics in the three countries nowadays. First, the re-election of President Trump on his credo Americanism may strain the relations with its two Asian allies, Korea and Japan. The expected call for increased roles and burden sharing by two allies must be handled in good faith and fair dealing to maintain the integrity of the alliance and maximize its integrity deterrence. In addition, likely trade frictions between the U.S. and Korea and Japan, on the other hand, require resolution based on a fair and preferential treatment for allies. Another factor is the political instability in Japan caused by the defeat of Prime Minister Ishiba's LDP in the recent Senate election. Then may cast a shadow over the prospect for the trilateral relationship because its most fragile link, the Seoul-Tokyo ties, is not yet fully stabilized, even though it has improved quite a lot since President Yoon improved bilateral ties with Tokyo 2 years ago. And tough political situation of President Yoon and the inevitable innovation of Prime Minister Ishiba's minority coalition government may make it difficult for both countries, I mean Korea and Japan, to clear the minds in the pathway to full-fledged bilateral ties, especially in the realm of past history. And another factor just then might affect the dynamics of trilateral partnership might be a negative change in external relations. As was already pointed out in the previous session, the expanding convergence of the axis of disruption formed by autocratic China, Russia, and North Korea has become a source of serious challenge to the trilateral partnership as well as the global order. North Korea's adventurism in sending arms and troops in support of Russia's aggression, as well as China's continued logistical and financial support in Russia's war efforts, pose a serious threat to Eurasian security as a whole. Russia's intensified strategic ties and military cooperation with North Korea will endanger the peace and security in Northeast Asia by emboldening North Korea with enhanced nuclear and missile capability. Combined with China's plan to increase its nuclear arsenal by 3 times by 2035, the boosted Russia-North Korea strategic ties, will critically undermine the nuclear parity in this region. Another uncertain element is the impact of President Trump's transactional diplomacy on the U.S.-China strategic competition. Trump administration's strategy and planned endgame will affect the dynamics of the trilateral partnership. The timing and mode of the end of the Russia-Ukraine war, which next U.S. government will focus on at an early stage, may have also profound impact on the strategic calculus of China and North Korea. An early end to the war on fair and reasonable terms to Ukraine would be beneficial to the security environment in Northeast Asia. I would like to add some points to be pursued for the development of these August trilateral partnership. First, more efforts should be made to expand this trilateral cooperation in the field of education and economy. Just let the 3 peoples feel the benefit of trilateral partnership directly. Second, the pursuit of denuclearizing North Korea should not be abandoned, even though some interim measures might be devised to break the deadlock. Third, with other like-minded states, the 3 partners should speedily establish a new contact group on North Korean human rights issues. Fourth, with close strategic consultation with Seoul and Tokyo, Washington needs to work out guardrails on U.S.-China strategic competition to avoid accidental conflicts. Fifth, the 3 partners should double down on their outreach to Global South, especially Southeast Asia. Recent poll indicating China's stronger pull to Southeast Asia than the United States must be taken seriously. Last but not least, the 3 countries should also step up joint efforts in concrete projects in various fields in the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador SHIN, for your very comprehensive evaluation as well as specific prescriptions for the progress in our trilateral partnership. Seiler, floor is yours.
I'm often asked the question, is North Korea deterred? And my response when I hear that question is, as a policymaker, I will give you a strong yes. You know, we have a robust alliance, we have readiness maintained in both conventional and the nuclear domains. As an analyst, I have to tell you I don't know, because we don't know why North Korea does or doesn't do things, what the impact of our deployments are or is not. And I somewhat feel the same when asked the question, how sustainable is the progress that we've achieved in the trilateral domain in terms of some remarkable developments over the past 2 years, and will it survive a handoff to new leaderships? And that's not just, obviously in Washington, but as well as Seoul and Tokyo. But within that context of uncertainty, let me focus on 3 T's to kind of shape some thinking on how we might look at assessing the trilateral phenomenon, how we got to where we are, and how we continue the momentum going forward. What made trilateral cooperation possible? Without repeating what's been said over and over, it is just worth noting the timing here of having the right people in the right places. I think Victor was right on in characterizing Deputy Secretary Kurt Campbell's efforts while he was at the White House and then later over at State, but as well as, of course, the leadership starting at the very top, President Biden's willingness to invest the time and political capital into this was unprecedented. In the Republic of Korea, we also had a great visionary with President Yoon, and an issue that remains very politically decisive, as all of us know, in terms of particularly thinking back, I was at the White House when we had the original debate and controversy over the GSIS extension, and we also had at that time the renegotiation of the Comfort Women deal, and a lot of that ended up not having the sustainability. We had the right people in the right place, but failed to have the opportunity to fully institutionalize it. That's very different this time. I think a lot of efforts at institutionalization, are really kind of developing these habits of cooperation, so that you do it because it's just something you do. I remember during the 2016 and 2017 missile a month mania, every missile launch we would have a U.S. ROK Japan trilateral. And because it was in our zone, time zone out there, I was in Korea at the time with U.S. Forces Korea. I usually went out to represent the U.S. analytics side, what we saw with the missile launch, how far it flew, what altitude, et cetera. But I always made certain that I rotated giving both, our ROK and Japan counterparts, and it began to be almost like a competition to show how much you know and how well you're assessing it, and that really helped kind of develop that type of cooperation, and it became very natural. And I think in those areas that we see now, they're baby steps at first, the trilateral exercise, Freedom Edge, the cooperation on missile defense, which is so crucial if we're going to have the opportunity to intercept, these missiles. You got to reduce your what they call sensor to shooter time. The time between when you detect something that you can use for targeting data and how quickly you can shoot. And this is not possible without close cooperation among 3 allies out there who bring unique capabilities. Cooperation in the cyber realm as well. But again, the fact that we have this timing of the right people in the right place for what was the second T, the emerging threat. Let's be honest, a lot of the advancements that we have been able to achieve in multilateral efforts in the region, or specifically on the Korean Peninsula, has been the growing threat posed by China and North Korea. And the fact that it's no longer kind of deniable. You can hedge a little bit. You can say, well, we're going to try to find some, this is not a choice between China and the United States. But the reality is China consistently acts aggressively in a way that motivates potential partners of the United States to cooperate. And it happened to really be, I think, a big contributor, together with North Korea's aggressive missile launches since 2019 Hanoi summit failed. There was just a demand signal among the leaderships in Seoul and Tokyo and Washington that made this a unique time. Now, this is it's not a done deal. It doesn't take very much probing either on Twitter or in the conventional media to see questions over whether the Republic of Korea has gotten too close to the United States, too close to Japan, accusations that our policy walked Kim Jong-un into Vladimir Putin's lap, that the trilateralism is increasing China's acceleration of its own nuclear arsenal. You see the accusations out there, and I think there are some sympathetic ears to that even within the ROK, and that's a good thing, because I think we can argue through these. You have to be willing to make a defense, though, however, for the actions that we take and why we say we need to worry about, an axis of upheaval. We need to be concerned about this new cooperation between China, Russia, and North Korea. And the best way to counter it is through, not one-on-one, efforts to try to make China help work with Russia or make Russia be convinced why they shouldn't let North Korea troops in, but rather to deal with it from a position of strength and cooperation. And everybody knows how historically difficult Japan-Korea reconciliation has been. And for Beijing to sit and watch the actions of North Korea and its own actions drive to greater cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo, and of course Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington, is something that we took good advantage of and will need to do that going forward. And the final key is taboos. A lot of taboos have been broken. Like when you talk about the role of Japan in case of a conflict on the Korean Peninsula. Like, how did we ever go all these years without realizing that we need those air bases? We can't execute any O plan on the peninsula without some type of involvement with Japan. But we were never allowed to talk about it, or China as a threat. For many years, maybe for prudent reasons, we tried not to make it look like we're pursuing some type of containment strategy, but at the same time, and understanding all the vested economic interests that the Republic of Korea has in its relationship with China. It no longer is taboo to talk about, what do we do in case of a Taiwan Strait crisis? Not that we have to have the answer to it, but a lot of the things that we couldn't talk about, we now can talk about it. And the trilateral format is the most excellent way to talk about it, because everybody who's involved in this is in the room. Over time, going forward, generational change, I think, will help us. I think there's some institutionalized within even the culture itself, mutual skepticism, mutual distrust, that as we go on, generations will be able to look past and maybe resolve issues of history in the past in a way that is more forward-leaning, that builds upon what's already taken place. Again, over time, the threat posed by the cooperation between China, Russia, and North Korea will become more apparent, thus driving up the value of trilateral cooperation. And I think even, you notice I haven't talked about what type of transformational impediments may be posed by a Trump presidency. I think already things are looking good. I think, the beauty of trilateralism, the way we do it, is it doesn't marginalize bilateralism. Historically, as you know, everybody loves it when your country's leader is visiting Washington on a state visit, or the U.S. president is visiting your country. So there still will be an important piece for bilateral relationships. I think Donald Trump's the initial telephone call readout that we saw with President Yoon, I found very encouraging, both in terms of demonstrating President Yoon's savvy at working to develop the relationship, as well as President Trump's articulated interest in and knowledge of the Korean Peninsula. So I think there's some areas for modest optimism now, but there remains work going forward.
Excellent. Okay. The last speaker is Dr. Jo Bi-yeon.
Thank you. It's really a great honor and privilege to be part of this panel, and as the last speaker of the panel, it would have been more interesting if I would disagree with all the panelists, but all the comments that were made, I'm in full agreement with what's been already said. But just to reiterate and stress the accomplishments that we have made in the Trilateral cooperation, I think the three countries have, together in cooperation, have pushed new horizons on at least three critical fronts. The first is in the realms of declaratory policy. It has been already said, but the three countries have come down to the Camp David Accords. We have seen tremendous development of our coordinated statements on North Korea. Especially recently, we have been laying out joint statements on DPRK-Russia relations, especially DPRK's military deployment in Ukraine. We have also seen coordinated statements on Taiwan Strait and South China Sea, which are really the new areas of resolve that we have included in the statements. The second area of development is institutionalization, building from the Camp David commitment to consult. We have now reached to the point where we are establishing the Trilateral Secretariat to better institutionalize and regularize the Trilateral consultation. Third area is in the realms of operationalization. All the things have been already mentioned by Ambassador SHIN, but all exercises, the real-time data sharing mechanisms are necessary means to respond to the DPRK's threats and maintaining peace in the Pacific. The question is, of course, then, will it last? I think there are many grounds to expect turbulences, many uncertainties, headwinds, as Ambassador SHIN mentioned. But I think while Trump 2.0 does pose a lot of uncertainties, my view is that at least there are some strong structural undercurrents that will make this trilateral partnership to at least muddle through. The tone and manner how this trilateral partnership is pushed may be more transactional. It could come in more crude delivery of statements. But despite all this fog of uncertainties, I think what we actually do know are that there are two structural conditions that will push the three countries to better coordinate. The first kind of area of structural condition is the troubled regional stability writ large. I think U.S. has recently released the new nuclear employment planning guidance, and what this document highlights is that the security environment that U.S. faces is an environment where it will face multiple nuclear peers. And it's an environment where it has to simultaneously deter Russia, China, and North Korea. And I think the situation is where Trump 2.0 will start. So if this nuclear arsenal of the three adversaries outmatch that of the US, I think this will accelerate the Trump administration to continue their modernization of nuclear forces, which they really began in their first administration. And in that sense, conventional allies in U.S.'s perspective, like South Korea and Japan, will be the strategic partners, in my perspective, in U.S.'s pursuit of nuclear modernization, while because it will need to maneuver enhanced interoperability of the allies, it will need to maneuver arms control and non-proliferation principles in the region. From Seoul and Tokyo's perspective, whether it is really a transactional trilateral partnership, it will still be critical because of the dear security situation that we are facing right now. It's not only DPRK, but now it's DPRK-Russia relations. And for the eyes of Tokyo, the China question is also an important incentive for them to remain within this trilateral partnership. The second known area of unpredictability is, I think, U.S.-China relations. We are seeing news outlets of how Trump's 2.0 cabinet will be filled by the selective nominated personnel. And what this signals is that U.S.-China relations will be rough. And for Seoul and Tokyo's perspective, possible return of transactionalism to demanding the allies to take sides in this situation could possibly, we cannot exclude the possibility it will push the domestic constituencies in allies like Seoul and Tokyo, especially Seoul, to consider, fiddle this idea of strategic flexibility between US and China. It could also revive nuclear debate in Seoul. But in my view, will it be aggravated to the extent that will suspend trilateral partnership? In my personal capacity, I do not think it would be that way because, as I already mentioned, given the security situation right now, there are just so many incentives for the three partners to stay within the trilateral partnership. And second kind of component that I could think of is the time constraints. Given if we see all the domestic political cycles of the three countries, long story short, whether it is America first or strategic flexibility or any ambitions for something more autonomous cannot be achieved in this short period of term in office. So the consolidated resolve, consultation mechanisms and operationalization that we have achieved through Camp David will be dearly used for all three countries altogether. Considering the time, I'll leave my remarks short for the future efforts. But I'm in full agreement with what Ambassador SHIN laid out, especially his point on the trilateral partnerships need to focus on denuclearization of North Korea. When Trump's President-elect Trump's policy agenda first came out, we all recognized how denuclearization was actually absent from the agenda. And so if arms control is going to be discussed more prominently in dealing with North Korea, I think what the three countries have to do is at least establish discussion of arms control as interim measures to denuclearization. And second, if this is the pathway that we go, we have to stress that any consultation about this matter, the consultation with allies it should precede between then the discussion with North Korea. And I'll end here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Wonderful kind of a round of initial remark. Let me ask a couple of questions to Dr. Katz. You highlighted the terminology of alliance management. But for me, the Trump and his staff members are more interested in, if I may, structural readjustment of alliance management. Previous kind of alliance has been standing on kind of a unilateral sacrifice of the United States. The U.S. allies tend to be kind of free riders. So under this kind of assumption, do you think how we can suggest some fresh ways for constructive kind of alliance management? My second question is, as long as North Korean threat is concerned, I think we can sustain our trilateral partnership in a second Trump administration. But apparent problem is China. How we, three of us, can deal with the China factor together. Particularly when ROK is taking some sort of a cautious attitude toward China. So, do you have any ideas about those two difficult questions?
Yes, thank you. Those are difficult questions. Okay, so you hit on something that I kind of a little bit breezed over, and I'll get into it a little bit, which is how do we conduct alliance management in the context of alliance skepticism is what I would say. And in my remarks, I said I'm hopeful that under this current security environment, the U.S. will feel compelled to manage the alliance differently, perhaps. But that's a hope. That's not necessarily something that's based on, my knowledge of things, that happened in the past or anything that I know, insider knowledge. That is why I honed in on the key role of the other two, which I think there's been somewhat of a change in terms of alliance management since Trump won. One, we have President Yoon, who has put the alliance front and center and staked, his foreign policy on that, which is somewhat different. It's not to say President Moon wasn't, didn't care about the alliance, but it wasn't so much front and center. So we have a very strong motivation from President Yoon to manage the alliance, and I think that's going to make a difference. And likewise, I think, Prime Minister Ishiba's early on, but I think that will be somewhat matched. So alliance management can come from both sides. I think if we see a continuation of Trump 1, which is a possibility, we're going to have to rely on the others to, in a sense, reassure the U.S. and maybe take this ties into your second question, these baby steps on China, which we've already seen in statements along the lines of, okay, we'll put Taiwan in a joint statement, okay, we'll put South China Sea in a joint statement, okay, we'll have an Indo-Pacific strategy. These are very big moves by President Yoon that should have an impact if they're explained along these lines. Look, we're moving your way. This is a give and take. And by the way, President Trump, you had a big role in this, and we're moving your direction. I mean, that's actually true. So I think relationship management and leadership is key. I mean, the strategic environment is always important, but we have seen relations be good and bad under a worsening strategic environment. That's a linear change more, right? So we've seen the good and bad. The leadership is critical. But I'm hopeful that with the strong belief in the alliances that we have from the other two partners and the different environment, that we'll maybe have a different type of experience. We might still have alliance skepticism, but we might have different outcomes.
Do you think upcoming Trump administration is still interested in putting Korea and Japan into trilateral framework? Many media and many pundits are saying Trump preferred to have bilateral kind of dealings rather than kind of apparently sophisticated kind of a trilateral or quadrilateral kind of a cooperation. Probably he is not quite happy about Korea and Japan ganging up, upon the United States to put pressure on a better alliance management.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I hope we can avoid that dynamic. Honestly, that's what I worry about a lot. I would just say, again, to the strategic environment, of course, the U.S. has a lot of agency, but it's facing a network. It's facing an axis that's growing. We want to face that alone, or do we want to face that with a strong network? It's up to him. Does he want to win?
Okay. Ambassador SHIN, you emphasized Korea-Japan ties are yet to be stabilized. And also you highlighted some weakened or weak governments of Korea and Japan. How to repair those kind of weakness, or how could we prevent? Next year, 60th anniversary of Korea-Japan diplomatic normalization, and many kind of occasions are waiting for us. But you emphasize some headwinds to our trilateral partnership. The key variable is Korea-Japan relations. How to overcome some possible obstacles?
Well, thank you for the difficult question.
Yes, this is a really difficult question.
It is truly difficult to talk about our bilateral ties with Tokyo. As you mentioned, next year marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between Seoul and Tokyo. On the other hand, next year also marks the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, as well as the 20th anniversary of so-called Takeshima Day in Japan. It means that all this kind of celebration or remembrance can rekindle the controversy over history and territorial issues between Korea and Japan. Of course, I know that President Yoon is quite firm on his belief to have good relations with Tokyo for the whole purpose of his entire foreign policy. Prime Minister Ishiba of Japan is also very forthcoming in history-related issues. However, as I mentioned, President Yoon's government is facing very tough domestic political environment. So is Prime Minister Ishiba. So when we tackle past history issues, we need to have a strong leadership to persuade public views in both countries to come forward with a kind of breakthrough in resolving history-related issues. But that is not the case. So we have to be very cautious in managing the bilateral ties that has been restored since President Yoon took the initiative of resolving the so-called forced labor issue through third-party payment. I know that currently Korean public is very dissatisfied with the way the Japanese government and Japanese society is handling the forced labor issue. And they think that the response from Tokyo is falls short of the expectation. So they are very dissatisfied. On the other hand, Japan is anxious that President Yoon's initiative will go on after maybe 3 years, the presidential election 3 years later. I mean, the continuity of Korea's Japan policy. So they are anxious, and Korean people are dissatisfied. And those two different kind of mixture between the two parties may work against the smooth pathway to full-fledged, stabilized ties between Seoul and Tokyo.
Okay, thank you. Seiler, recently Biden, Ishiba, and Yoon agreed to establish a Trilateral Secretariat for more effective kind of institutionalized coordination. Do you think that this is a good idea? And if it is really, established, where do you think is the best venue for the Secretariat?
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Everybody loves to go to Hawaii. Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that astounded me when I first got directly involved in policy making and summitry is realizing how much strong agreement leaders can have in a certain policy or a certain decision, and then as you go down from the president to the secretary, deputy secretary, assistant secretary, director general, it all falls apart because it's not deep state, but it is kind of a bureaucracy's kind of inherent inertia and difficulty to. Yeah, they hedge. There's a degree of hedging. If you're a career civil servant, you're a career military officer, and you got a presidential election coming up in a few years, and your robust support for trilateralism or closer ties with Japan or GSOMIA or whatever you're advocating suddenly looks like you were a traitor or you were less than patriotic in carrying out your job. I think having that standing secretariat will bring together the leader's intent in the area where, you have the sustainment of the leader's intent and some mechanism by which to regularly judge and measure progress. And therefore, you begin to see the bureaucracy more responsive. And I think that's a big role that the Secretariat will play. And as a standing organization, I was thinking, I don't know what the comparison with exercises were when suddenly in 2018, what we had done for years regularly, we stopped doing, right? And there was a decision, a radical decision, to stand down on military training. It's something that seemed like impossible to imagine. But you know what? The framework was still there. We had Combined Forces Command. We substituted other things to try to compensate for it. And so then when we resumed the exercises again, following the advent of the Yoon administration, we could get things going. I think going forward, we'll have that phenomenon with a lot of the trilateral cooperation. Some things won't be endurable. Some things will come up for question. Are we really gaining anything out of intelligence sharing? Is it really worth having these meetings on cyber? You'll have these questions, but I think the Secretariat will at least force people to come together within a structure that is not just some artificial extension of current handling of those counts within respective foreign services, foreign ministries. But that would indeed, force everybody to come to the table, and that will have a reinforcing effect over time.
Okay, last question is directed to Dr. Cho. Actually, Ambassador SHIN briefly mentioned China's kind of a growing nuclear arsenal. But recently, Biden administration released a nuclear strategic memorandum or something, and highlighted we need to deal with the coordinated nuclear threats coming from China, Russia, and North Korea. Since you are working at Defense Institute, how three of us can deal with this kind of a coordinated nuclear threats coming from those three entities?
Difficult question.
Yeah, another difficult question.
But the report that you mentioned is the new nuclear planning employment guidance that was really done, that 491 report. And their main concern is that, as Professor Kim already mentioned, it's the nuclear arsenal of the three countries and how it challenges the U.S. security environment and the need to be able to simultaneously deter all three countries at once. And so how then could three countries could deter this, work together in this part? Well, in terms of what I learned about deterrence are two things. Number one is that, as Deputy Secretary of State Kirk Campbell just mentioned, deterrence is about a continuous set of propositions. It's a continued work in progress. We have to work together, work through it. It's never going to be a fait accompli. The second thing I know about deterrence is that it's not necessarily all about quantity, but it's also how we project these quantities, arsenals that we have. So in terms of trilateral partnership, I think what we have right now is a good amount of progress in trilateral consultation, but we do have definitely a lot of things to do in coordination. So then in order to respond to these kind of convergence of autocracies, I think we need to work in the consultative mechanisms even more. For instance, we could think about how the Extended Deterrence Strategy Group, EDSDG, that is run for deputy minister level in South Korea, could be joined with Extended Deterrence Dialogue with Japan, EDD, which are in my understanding, are managed by the same office in U.S. State Department. So if it's a kind of 2+2, that would be a mechanism for extended deterrence. And through this consultation mechanism, I have another kind of proposition, which is that the three countries could pursue a kind of conventional nuclear coordination. I'm sure you are all aware of the concept of conventional nuclear integration, which is the concept that we, South Korea and US, are really working on. South Korea's main goal through this CNI is by specifying South Korea's role within US's nuclear operation. It increases South Korea's own capabilities, and also it can lock in US's security commitments. And I think this kind of understanding and logic could be applied to the three countries. And of course, South Korea and Japan are not alliance, it's a quasi-alliance. And so conventional nuclear coordination of some sort that is already mentioned in the 491 report could be the way forward. Thank you.
So CNI is also applicable to trilateral cooperation?
But the I is integration, so maybe coordination.
Coordination is more appropriate. Okay, let me take just one question from the floor because time is running out. Okay, please come to the microphone.
Mr. Katz Campbell.
Yeah, please identify yourself.
Yes, Kenji Sawai, Global Peace Foundation. 10 years ago, Katz Campbell mentioned one Korea is the ultimate only solution for denuclearization of North Korea. So, Trilateral Camp David Summit supported free and unified Korea peace. Please explain about the solution of, as a solution, the free and unified Korea.
Oh yeah, one Korea. So you raise a question to
Question. Yes, question about please explain.
to me or to
Yeah, especially Dr. Seiler.
Seiler.
So what's the question again?
Question again?
So-
one Korea policy.
How Korea policy of trilateral cooperation for free and unified Korea. Currently, young government promoting free and unified Korea. So for security issue.
Well, yeah, I think, well, let's focus on the unification doctrine that President Yoon rolled out on August 15th, which, yeah, I tell people it's not so much a plan. In fact, I like the choice of the word doctrine because there's no timeline with a specific plan that would lock you into either criticism of being overly optimistic or underestimating the problem or making too many assumptions, but rather, said from now on, we want to make life better for the people of North Korea. And that could lead to a change in government systems that unifies the two peninsulas, but it certainly starts with doing things that help mitigate the pain of North Korea's. And, assumes that, with boldness and unapologetically, unification of the Korean Peninsula will take place under the leadership of a democratic, free market economy, human rights respecting Republic of Korea. No confederation, Koryo confederation, or low stage this or that, and to get an international community buy-in that we are committed to, because it can take different manifestations depending on country. What can the Japanese do? Well, they can be certain that if they ever pursue some type of abductee issue resolution, that it's not done in a sloppy way that actually rewards North Korea and its system without, affecting that change. So I do think, it's a longer-term set of principles. I think some of them are principles and not policy decisions, so they will survive even a potential handoff to a progressive government, a Moon Jae-in-like government. It would just look differently as we're engaging and try to achieve the same objectives. So I think that's where the trilateral piece can plug into there. And again, that's the international dimension of the doctrine as well, which said we will try to build consensus internationally It will be part of Republic of Korea's diplomatic strategy, is to build consensus internationally on the need for this type of approach to North Korea. So I hope that helped.
Wonderful answer. Let me conclude this session by saying that, let me quote Henry Ford, who is the founder of Ford Motor Company. He once said, coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is a progress. And working together is a success. So 3 of us have already come together and kept together, and we are really well poised to work together. So we are moving toward a success. So on that optimistic note, let me adjourn this session. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll now take a